Whoa. Gonna have to clean this up. Welcome to Hardware Asylum. As you can see, it's been a while since I've recorded a video, so let's get things cleaned up. Had a system upgrade. We have some water-cooled parts here. Big old graphics card. Radiator. I have a new Pentium 2 board. We'll look at that in a little bit. And yeah, I was doing some AI work. I've got the Threadripper rolling. Let's get this out of here. There we go, that looks a little better. Welcome to Hardware Asylum. I thought it'd be fun to do a sepTandy episode, or maybe a bunch of videos during the month of September. And for that, I'm going to be using this new, to me, Tandy 1000 TX. Now I have a long history with the Tandy 1000. I had a 1000 SX when I was a kid. My best friend in high school had the Tandy 1000 TX. He got it slightly after I did. And I was always envious because he had the 286. But you know, if you look at the specs, it's basically the same computer. This one I got off of eBay. So let's take a look and see what's inside. Now, I did talk about this computer on the Hardware Asylum podcast. I will link that episode down in the show notes below so you can check it out. But we have almost a complete machine in here. So we got a couple of discs. We got the fancy cool joystick with the special port. Played a lot of Flight Simulator with that joystick. Got the kick-ass Tandy keyboard, and it's actually in pretty good shape. Just a little bit of yellowing, but not enough that I'm going to be too worried about that. Have another 3.5-inch disc. There is a bit of a musty smell in here. I'm sure that this computer was used and then stuck down in a basement and then sold during an estate sale. So I'm not sure if these discs are any good. Yeah, kind of looks like there's a spot on that one. So there might be a little bit of mold, but that's okay because all of these discs are available online, and technically I got copies of these. Okay, so now for the machine. Here we have the Tandy 1000 TX. You can tell by the badge on the front. There was several versions of the 1000. We had the EX, the SX, which was the same form factor. And then we had the HX, which was the smaller version of this computer, similar to the EX in the previous edition. There's a bit of yellowing, so we'll have to clean this up. Obviously, you can tell on the top, there was a monitor sitting here for a very, very long time. Unfortunately, I do not have a Tandy monitor compatible with this particular computer. We'll need the CGA EGA version based off of the monitor port here. But the nice thing about these computers is we have several expansion slots. You can see one of them is already occupied. So we can put in sound cards, video cards, I/O cards, pretty much anything we want. And that is what I will do when I get this machine up and running. Now, I was lucky enough to get this computer with a printer and the special printer cable. So it's got the edge connector. And another power cord, which is supposed to go with the computer. But here we have the Tandy DMP-130. Strangely enough, I believe this was the same printer that I had with my Tandy 1000 SX. Works extremely well. It is a tractor feed style dot matrix printer. And aside from the print cartridge probably being dry or wore out, I'm pretty sure that this thing's going to work just fine. Now, I think I'll do the printer off camera, unless there's something interesting in there. So we'll put this away for right now. I don't plan to do anything with the joystick except make sure that it works. Now, I'd like to do something about the cable on the keyboard. You know, it's a little nasty, but as long as the keyboard works, that's all we're going to do with it. So I think what we're going to do is just take it apart and get it ready for cleaning. You know, honestly, I have not turned this thing on, but since I don't have a monitor, it would be kind of a bit moot. And based off of the listing, this computer works just fine. So let's get the cover off. To do that, there are two screws at the bottom. Right here, right there, and one over here on the right, behind my thumb. Remove those, and then the cover slides this way. And if you've seen any of these videos before, you will already be aware of all that stuff, but we need to get the cover off so that we can get the plastic off to do a retro bright, which is something that I've already covered on this channel, but I'll probably show because, you know, why not, right? And then while we have the cover off, we can dust and clean the inside, and then just make sure everything's clean. And you know, if the system doesn't work, at least we know that it's cleaned. Alright, pulls the cover off. Screws fall out. Yep, smells a lot like basement mildew. All of the Tandys were built during a time when EMI was, you know, the worst thing since the invention of the horse. So there is metal shielding everywhere. On a modern PC, we got tempered glass on both sides, but the computers are also a bit more efficient than they were back in the day. To get the covers off, there's basically two screws, I think. There's one up here in the front. Funny story, on my Tandy 1000 SX, it came from Tandy with 384 kilobytes of memory. And as a kid with a lawn mowing job, I was able to acquire enough money to buy the memory upgrade. So we went to Radio Shack, bought some memory, and then I had to take the 1000 SX apart, do this exact same thing, and then insert the memory into these little sockets down here. The TX came with 640K from the factory. Oh, and there's some unpopulated spots here. You can populate those and get 700 and some odd K, but according to the documentation, it's only used for video. You can't make it into a RAM disk. You can't use it for EMS memory. So it's kind of pointless, which would be why this computer never got upgraded. Oh, one thing you might have noticed, there was an expansion card already here, which is a hard card. Tandy offered floppy drives on board with the controller. If you wanted a hard drive, you had to get a hard card, which I believe it's IDE. Just basically plugs into expansion slot. It has its own controller, so then it should be picked up by the internal BIOS and allow you to boot from it. Unlike on modern computers where you'd set up the hard drive in the BIOS, it had its own firmware on here, so when the computer booted up, it would look for items on the expansion slot bus and then determine what to do with them. I think there's, yeah, we got some plastic on the back. There's a screw here, here, and here, and that should allow it to be popped off. Come on. You can do it. Oh, hey. Power switch. Oh, that's right. Power switch here on the side. Super satisfactory click. The red button on the front was for reset. Thing with DOS, early DOS on these computers is that, you know, if you had a problem, you just hit the reset button and start it all over. On the modern computer, that's not necessary for the most part, although I think some people do it in multiplayer games when they decide they want to rage quit. Alright, so this should just pop off here. There we go. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's a bit dirty, but you know, that's why we pull it apart. So those are our Retrobrite parts, based off of the dirt and the power supply. Maybe we'll pull this apart and clean it. Looks a bit oily, oh my gosh. But you know, electronics back then had a lot more oil, and maybe this fan has kind of lost its lubrication, it's hard to say. The shells on Tandy's were galvanized metal, I believe, or nickel plated or something, but this had sat, you know, you can see this on the box actually, you know, assuming that this was in somebody's basement. There's some water damage on the box that I got it in, and you know, we got a bit of surface rust on the bottom. Otherwise though, everything seems to be in pretty great shape. The rust didn't get on the inside. There's a few pittings and stuff, but we can clean that up with some metal polish. Alright, I was able to get some Retrobrite down. It turns out to be like some yellowing and I think some staining, because it didn't need to stay out for very long. However, there was some damage at the top. This is, if you remember, where the impressions were for the monitor. And as you can see, they are kind of bleached out, and that's something that I've run into a couple of times when I've been doing Retrobrite, and there's a pretty easy way to fix it. I'm going to do that now. Much like with other ABS, when it becomes damaged, like if it gets creased or something like that, or sun damage, like fenders on a Jeep for instance, you can usually restore it by applying some heat. So I have here my heat gun. This is what I use to bend PETG tubing when I'm building custom PCs. And now we're going to go and see if we can get this to lighten up. Hopefully that shows up on the camera. parts are gone. Alright, now that the retrobite's done, we can turn our attention to the base chassis. And as I started looking at this a little bit closer, I noticed some things down here in the lower corner of the PCB. There's some orange dust. So let's start taking this apart. We'll go ahead and start with the hard drive. So this is a Western Digital. Gets its power from the expansion card. This is likely the BIOS. Turn it over. This is a servo drive. So while it might be IDE, it's going to be relatively slow because of that, which I think is going to be awesome. Looking at the end here, we've got a 40-pin ribbon cable. So I'll be interested to know more about this. We'll just look up the numbers. Next we can get the drive cage out. Looks like it's just a few screws. Techs back in the 80s used to have nut drivers instead of screwdrivers. That's why all these screws have hex heads on them. Got some really expensive toolkits. And they would really be specially designed for whatever they're working on. So Tandy would have a toolkit, Xerox would have a toolkit, and so on and so forth. Nowadays, things have become a little bit more universal. Awesome. Okay, we got a ribbon cable in the back here. Power plug. And my 3.5 did not have anything hooked up. So I wonder if the 3.5 actually is working. But we can see that this is a TIAC FD55BV, which is the 360K edition. And so my friend in high school that had one of these computers, his PC only had the 3.5. They had to buy the 5.25 after the fact. You can look at this board a little bit later, but we have a PC chipset. One of these is the 286 CPU. A really, really tall chip right there, and this looks like the math coprocessor. Alright, last thing we gotta get out of here is the power supply. And we noticed this when we did the retrobrite. The fan has AC fan problems, which is always this oily black dust that just kind of cakes on the fan. And I'm not sure if it's coming from the fan or if it's a product of the electricity and the dirt and stuff, but all AC fans are like that. Alright, power supply. They're not hermetically sealed like with modern ones these days, which is kind of fun. So we have a lot of that brown dirt at the bottom, and then whatever's caked onto the fan. And maybe this is a DC fan, not an AC fan. Let's take a look. No, DC 12 volts, so maybe that's from the transformer inside. I don't know, either way, it's dirty. Let's clean it. So I just took some compressed air to the power supply and it cleaned up really nice. I can wipe out all of the oily dirt and stuff. The fan, on the other hand, it might need some brake clean or something. It's pretty filthy. Alright, like I said, I took some brake clean to this fan and it cleaned up really nice. So, and it still spins good, doesn't make any noise. I think it'll be fine. We can put this back together. Okay, the compressed air cleaned this up really well. It looks a lot better than it did. However, I was blowing underneath the PCB and there was a lot of dust being flown out. I was like, where would that come from? Well, I looked closely at the bottom. Let's see if we can get you positioned here. If you look carefully, this is rust. Well, over here, this is really smooth. Rough. I am thinking that the guy that sold this just basically turned it over, saw that it was all rusty, and cleaned it up a little bit. Well, see these gaps here? All that dust is going to go underneath the PCB. So we're going to have to pull that out. And that should be pretty easy. We just have to release these 4 bolts, if you will, and then remove some screws, and it should just lift out. We have a fan over here that needs to be disconnected, and then our volume knob should just pop out. No. Our volume knob has a clip on the inside. Oh, that's actually pretty cool. Okay, that's easy to get. Well, there's a cotter key or whatever you want to call it. Right there. You just pop that out, and then this slides out of the potentiometer. We're just going to run it all the way to one direction, and then make sure that we get it put back the same way. Alright, speaker. Yeah, it's a pretty good thing that we removed this, because look at all that rust. From Mr. Smarty Pants, who decided that he wanted to sand the rust off the bottom of the case. Idiot. Alright, so it seems I went a little overboard. There's still some rust and discoloration in there, but I did take care of the bottom panel. Rust is all gone. Clean it up best I can. It's been quite a while on it, so let's put it back together. Then we can get started with the floppy drives. I think I'm just going to take them out of the cage, blow them out with the air compressor, and then maybe take a cotton swab to the heads and clean them up a little bit. Alright, it's power on time. We're not going to hook up the keyboard just quite yet. It goes right here. VGA graphics, we have the hard drive, the 2 drives, everything's plugged back in. Turn on the power switch. And see what we got. Okay, here we go. Oh, we got hard drive noises. And we have video. Insert system disk. Let's go get one. I think what we'll do is we'll hook up the keyboard too. Okay, we're back. We got keyboard plugged in. Hopefully that works. I do not have any low density 3.5s, so we'll have to use the disk that the computer came with. Should be okay. Oh, holy crap. You boot from the hard drive this time. Huh. Let's get you closer here and we'll just take a look, see what we got. Got a bit of a glare, apologize. MS-DOS 5. Oops. Wow, welcome back. The interesting thing about life is that, you know, when you have one, it can get in the way. And while I started this project as a sepTandy episode, it kind of snowballed into a problem after a problem after a problem. As part of the testing, I installed a Trident 16-bit ISA graphics card. This one that I just had in the stash. And that allowed me to see the screen, and you saw that in the video. But when I started up DeskMate, things just went blank. Screen was black. I'm like, well, what's going on here? Well, it turns out that since the TX has an 8-bit ISA bus, a lot of the graphics cards will go into 16-bit mode for performance reasons. So what you didn't see in the video is that I popped in several graphics cards that I had. And not a single one of them would actually work aside from just showing me the screen. Some of them actually wouldn't even boot up, which was a little weird. So I hopped out onto eBay and started amassing some stuff. So for instance, I needed some double density 3.5s. So I picked up one of these. Funny side story here is that, you know, this is another eBay purchase, and as you can see there, it's wrapped in plastic, right? Well, the ad was for a new inbox set of floppy disks, but they were opened to inspect the contents. And I'm like, seriously? You can't just open the package and still say it's new inbox. I mean, that's just silly. But in any event, these disks are what we need for the TX so that we can actually transfer some data. It's great. I had several low density 5 1/4 here. And then I also had a pack of Dyson discs that I pulled out of a stash that I brought back from a Seattle Cannonball Run for retro hardware. We talked about that in a Hardware Asylum podcast episode. I'll link it down in the show notes. I had also spent a considerable amount of time researching 8-bit ISA cards and some of the things that other creators, YouTubers, and retro enthusiasts have done to bring back their Tandy 1000s. So let's open up the chassis here and I'll show you what I got. Now, like before, I do have my Tandy approved hard card. I believe this is a 20 megabyte hard disk. And here we have an XT IDE adapter. This is a kit that I got off of eBay that you had to solder together to assemble. And that has one IDE port on the back. Now, as you can see, the compact flash card is inside the chassis. And really, I'm using this as extended storage. So I load that up with games and stuff that I want to use. And then we'll install them on the hard disk. Here is my VGA card, a proper 8-bit ISA, and then we also have a sound card. Also 8-bit ISA. I'm not sure if it's actually any good, but I do know that it is not a Sound Blaster brand. Now, I don't have Deskmate 2 installed on this machine. I never really liked that program even when I had my original Tandy. But we do have some games that would not trigger without a proper VGA card. So let's take a look. We do have volume control. It's pretty awesome. My 1940 Chevy. Yeah, it's yours. And this is my Tandy 1000 TX. It's been restored, cleaned, and modernized. There are a couple of things that I discovered along the way. One, 16-bit ISA cards. While you can install them in an 8-bit system, they don't necessarily work very well. The compact flash card that I installed via XT IDE is my internal NAS. Now, in a previous video, I did a restoration of a microscience drive. This is an MFM hard drive, and it used a voice coil for moving the arm around. Now, it also had an auto park feature, so when the power went off, it slammed the head all the way to the park position and locked it in place. Now, with hard drives that have servo motors to move the arms around, they don't auto park. So if you're playing your game and you turn your computer off and don't park the heads, if you move the computer around, you have a chance of damaging the platters. So one thing you need to do before you turn off your computer is run the park command. Just basically put it in your DOS path, type park, power off the computer, and away you go. Thank you for making it this far into the video. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and we'll see you in the next one.